Mercedes and Red Bull just found a completely legal way to gain over 1/10 of a second in the final meters of a lap. That's the difference between pole position and losing the race before it even starts. No one noticed. No one stopped it. And for 3 full race weekends, it worked perfectly. Until one single question forced the FIA to intervene just days before Miami. But here's what makes this insane. The trick didn't break the rules. It used them better than anyone else. It turned a safety system into pure performance. And what it was doing, in the exact moment every lap is decided, is something most fans completely missed. Because this wasn't about being faster. It was about not slowing down when everyone else had to. And once you see how they did it, you realize something much bigger is happening inside Formula One. Because once you understand the trick, you realize how simple it actually was. And that's what makes it dangerous. Because this didn't require a revolutionary engine. It didn't require a massive upgrade. It came down to one decision, made at the exact right moment. Now think about a qualifying lap. Everything is planned. Energy deployment, calculated. Battery usage, controlled. Every straight, every corner, optimized to perfection. The goal is simple. Arrive at the final straight, with just enough energy left to finish the lap. But not too much. Because extra energy means wasted potential earlier. So drivers push the system to the edge. Lap after lap. Until they reach that final section, almost empty. And under normal conditions, that's where performance drops. The system begins to recover energy. And that recovery slows the car down. Slightly, but enough to matter. Now here's where the trick changes everything. Instead of allowing that natural slowdown, the system is cut completely. Instantly. No recovery. No resistance. No loss of speed. And in that exact moment, the car behaves differently. Not faster everywhere. Just faster, where it matters most. Right before the line. And this is where the advantage becomes invisible. Because if you watch the lap, nothing looks unusual. The sectors look normal. The lines look clean. The driving looks identical. But the stopwatch tells a different story. A gap appears. Small, but decisive. And here's the part most people don't realize. That gain only exists for a few seconds. The final meters. The part of the lap that nobody focuses on. But in modern Formula One, that's enough. More than enough. Because qualifying is no longer about big differences. It's about tiny margins. Hundredths. Thousandths. And if you find a way to gain time where nobody else can, you control the grid. And controlling the grid means controlling the race. And this is exactly what Mercedes and Red Bull understood before anyone else. They weren't trying to be faster everywhere. They were choosing where to be faster. And that choice changed everything. But it also created something else. A pattern. A small detail, repeated again and again. One that eventually, someone could see. And once that pattern becomes visible, in a sport like this, it's only a matter of time before everything unravels. And that pattern didn't stay hidden for long. Because in Formula One, nothing escapes data. Every team is constantly watching each other. Every lap is broken down. Compared. Studied frame by frame, number by number. And eventually, something didn't add up. It was subtle. Almost invisible. But once you see it, you can't ignore it. At the end of certain laps, some cars weren't slowing down. Not like they should. Not like the model predicted. Not like every other car on the grid. And that's where suspicion begins. Because in this sport, when something breaks the pattern, there's always a reason. So engineers started digging deeper. Overlaying telemetry. Comparing speed traces. Looking at throttle input, energy deployment, battery levels. And what they found was even stranger. Everything looked normal until the final seconds. And then suddenly, the behavior changed. Clean. Sharp. Almost too perfect. Like a switch had been flipped. And that's when the question becomes unavoidable. Is this a breakthrough? Or is this something we're missing? Now here's the critical moment. Because at this point, teams have two choices. Stay silent and try to replicate it. Or go to the FIA and force clarity. And that decision can define an entire season. Because if you stay quiet, you might gain performance. But if you're wrong, you risk everything. And if you speak up, you might eliminate your rival's advantage instantly. And that's exactly where this story takes its most important turn. Because the team that noticed it didn't try to copy it first. They didn't keep it secret. They didn't gamble. They went straight to the FIA. A single question. Simple on the surface, but devastating in its consequences. Can we do this too? And the moment that question was asked, the countdown began. Because now, the FIA had to look closer. Not casually. Not quietly. but officially. And once that happens, there's no going back. Because in Formula One, the moment something becomes official, it stops being an advantage and starts becoming a problem. And this is the moment where everything collapses. Because once the FIA starts looking, they don't just check what you did. They check why you did it. And that changes the entire game. Before this, the system was blind. It didn't care about intention. A shutdown was a shutdown. A penalty was a penalty. Everything was automatic, clean, untouchable. But now, every action has context. Every data point has meaning. And that's exactly what kills the trick. Because the moment the FIA analyzed the telemetry, the difference became obvious. A natural energy drop looks organic, messy, gradual, unpredictable. But this was precise, perfectly timed, repeated with surgical accuracy, lap after lap. And that's not randomness. That's design. That's intent. And once intent is proven, the consequences change completely. Because now, it's no longer a clever use of the rules. It becomes a manipulation of a safety system. And that is something Formula One will never allow. So the FIA makes a decision. Not loud, not dramatic, but incredibly effective. They don't rewrite the rulebook. They don't issue a direct ban. They simply announce that from now on, every single MGUK shutdown will be monitored, individually, in real time, and more importantly, judged, not by what happens, but by why it happens. And that one shift destroys everything. Because now, teams are exposed. They can't hide behind automation. They can't claim coincidence. They can't disguise precision as randomness. Every deliberate move becomes visible. And once it's visible, it becomes punishable. Lap times can be deleted. Sessions can be compromised. Reputations can be damaged. And suddenly, that tiny advantage is no longer worth the risk. So just like that, the trick disappears. Not because it stopped working, but because it became too dangerous to use. And this is where the story reaches its most important point. Because the ban didn't just remove an advantage. It removed an illusion. For 3 races, the grid wasn't completely honest. There was something extra. Something hidden. Something that changed the outcome without anyone noticing. But now, that layer is gone. And what's left is the truth. The real pace. The real hierarchy. The real fight. And that's why Miami changes everything. Because this is the first time all season where nobody has that hidden edge. No shortcuts. No loopholes. No invisible gains at the finish line. Just raw performance. And that leads to one final question. One that every team, every driver, and every fan is about to answer. When the advantage disappears, who is actually the fastest? And this is where Miami becomes more than just another race. It becomes a test. A real one. Because for the first time this season, every team arrives with the same limitation. No hidden system. No clever timing. No last-second advantage before the line. Just the car, exactly as it is. And that's uncomfortable. Especially for teams that were quietly benefiting from something no longer there. Because losing 1/10 in Formula One isn't small. It's massive. It changes everything. Qualifying position. Dirty air. Strategy options. Race control. And when you remove that advantage overnight, you don't just slow down. You get exposed. Now here's where things get even more interesting. Because Miami is not just any circuit. Long straights. Heavy braking zones. Multiple acceleration points. Exactly the kind of track where that trick made the biggest difference. Which means its absence will be even more visible. More brutal. More revealing. And suddenly, teams that looked untouchable might not look so comfortable anymore. Because now, they have to find that time somewhere else. Through setup. Through aerodynamics. Through driver execution. And that's much harder to fake. Much harder to hide. Meanwhile, other teams are watching. Waiting. Because if you were not using the trick, this is your moment. This is your reset. Your chance to close the gap without upgrading a single part. And that's why one team in particular quietly becomes the biggest winner of all this. Ferrari. Because they never relied on it. They never built around it. They never needed it. And now, the playing field is level again. Not by performance, but by regulation. And that shift can redefine the order completely. But here's the part that makes this even more intense. We still don't know the full truth. Because there's one question nobody can answer yet. How much of the early season results were real? And how much were influenced by something that no longer exists? Because if that advantage was the difference between pole and second row, then everything we saw might need to be reinterpreted. And Miami is where that answer finally arrives. Not in data, not in theory, but on track, where there's nowhere left to hide. No explanation, no excuse. Just one lap, one chance, and pure performance. And when that moment comes, we're not just watching another qualifying session. We're watching the truth reveal itself in real time. And this is where everything finally comes together. Because once the lights go out in Miami, there's no more theory, no more speculation, no more hidden variables. Just reality. Raw, unforgiving, and impossible to manipulate. And the first place where that truth shows itself is not the race. It's qualifying. One lap. No traffic. No strategy. No excuses. Just pure speed. And this time, there is nowhere to hide in the final meters. No extra boost. No invisible advantage. No last-second gain before the line. Just the car and the driver. Exactly as they are. And that's what makes this moment so important. Because for the first time all season, we're about to see the real gaps. The real differences. The real hierarchy of the grid. And if those gaps suddenly change, if the teams that dominated early on start to struggle, if new names appear at the front, then everything we thought we knew disappears instantly. Because it means the story we've been watching was never complete. Now imagine this. A car that looked unbeatable in the first 3 races, suddenly fighting for second row. Another team, quietly consistent, suddenly on pole. And drivers, who seemed outmatched, now competing on equal terms. That's the kind of shift this decision can create. Not gradually, but instantly. And this is why the FIA's move is so powerful. Because they didn't just remove a trick. They removed a distortion. They forced the sport back into its purest form, where performance cannot be hidden behind interpretation. And that leads to the final realization. The one that connects everything you've heard so far. This wasn't about Mercedes. It wasn't about Red Bull. It wasn't even about Ferrari. It was about how close Formula One really is. So close that a fraction of a second, a detail in the final meters, a decision made at the perfect moment, can reshape an entire grid. And when you take that detail away, you don't just change results. You reveal the truth behind them. So when qualifying begins in Miami, you're not just watching cars fight for pole. You're watching a season reset itself. You're watching illusions disappear. You're watching reality take over. And the real question is no longer, who found the trick? It's much bigger than that. Who was truly fast, all along? And who was just one clever idea ahead of everyone else?